I would like to use the text that we've read in the New Testament and also the one in Psalm 22, the first verse, as basis for the sermon this afternoon. I would like to add John 19 to that. In the one text, we see Jesus entering in Jerusalem on a donkey and crowds cheering him and they praising God. And then in the other text, we see Jesus on the cross crying out, my God, why have thou forsaken me?" John takes it a bit further, and in the Gospel of John, Jesus ends off his journey on the cross with the words, "It is finished. It is done." And I would like to speak to you on the topic of a crown, a cross, and a crowd, a cross, and a crown. Crowd, a cross, and a crown. Let me tell you a little story. In the Reiners family, my surname is Reiners, it's quite an experience to go shopping. So if we go to the mall, it is indeed a bit of an adventure. You see, Renee, my wife, she has a thing for shoes. So whenever we go to the mall, it's like a radar. It's shoes, shoes, shoes. And when she sees a shoe store, she's there. My daughter, well, she has a thing for everything. She loves shopping. Anything with a price tag on, she's there. My son cannot stand crowds. He hates it. So he tries to find the quietest place there, and he's there. Well, I have my own thing, and that's for books. I love books. So whenever we go to the shopping mall, we just do our business, and then each of us head for wherever we want to go to. So I go to the nearest bookstore. I love books. I love old books. I love any books. So maybe I got that from my father. He was also a lover of books. When he died, no wonder he left me 2 books, his hymn book and his Bible. 2 books I really appreciate, 2 of the most prized possessions I have in my life. He had the same habit as I to make notes in the margin of whatever he was reading. So his hymn book and his Bible, both of them are full of notes. And it was quite an experience to go through these 2 books and follow his life story and his train of thought and just a lot of memories. But the one that touched me the most was going through his hymn book. His hymn book was very old. It was actually tacky after so many years. When you open it, it fell open right where his favorite hymn was. And his favorite hymn was the one that we sung just now. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross, the emblem of suffering and shame. And then the last part of that beautiful hymn, one day I will exchange that old cross for a crown. My father loved that old hymn so much. He was an early riser. So very early in the mornings, I remember listening to him whistling this old song. I remember him singing this old song so many times. You see, during this first Sunday of April, we also celebrate Jesus' entrance into Jerusalem. It's Palm Sunday. Strangely enough, his jubilant entrance with crowds screaming and laying their clothes and the palm trees is recorded very, very specifically in the Gospels. But it's strange that Matthew picked up on one emotion of Jesus: sadness. In that atmosphere of jubilance, that atmosphere of hosannas, there must have been a lot of people shouting it. Jesus was sad. You see, firstly, the crowds. There were thousands of them in Jerusalem. It was a time of Passover, and Jerusalem was filling up very quickly. The historian Josephus reminds us that the population of Jerusalem grew by at least 1 million people during Passover. Just picture this. Thousands and thousands of pilgrims are flocking in. During that time, up to 250,000 lambs were about to be slaughtered, and it was just animals, people, women, children, men. Everybody was trying to get a place in Jerusalem. And there Jesus came in. And these crowds welcome him. Come in, you are our hope. You, the one that we heard of so many times. With palms and clothes, they paved the way in front of him. Well, crowds. They either love you or they hate you. And you either love them or hate them. And here was Jesus' best chance ever to make his entrance into the public world like never before. Everything was on his side. Here he encountered everything that many people dream of their whole lives. The hosannas from the crowds. Jesus, here is your chance. He was used to the crowds. Jesus was very much used to the crowds, not that he was always so fond of them. So fond of the hosannas and the beautiful words and the applause from the crowds. No, not really. He was not that impressed by them. And particularly here, entering Jerusalem, we see Jesus crying. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, if you'd known what awaits you. Oh, Jerusalem, see beyond this. See beyond this jubilance. Jerusalem, open your eyes. But there was another reason. There were the crowds. But there was the cross. You see, from where he came in, just on the other side, there's a lonely old hill. Well, it's not really the place that you would have taken your guests to. It's a place where they crucified murderers, criminals. And I think from where he entered Jerusalem, right on the other side, maybe he had a peek. Maybe there was still a cross standing from the previous execution. But what is captured in this old hymn was so much part of his experience. On a hill far away stood an old rugged cross. A cross where he would cry out, my God, why have you abandoned me?" You see, before him, right in front of him, there's not the hosannas of the crowds, but the cry, the lonely cry of a man abandoned by that same crowd, by his friends. A cry of loneliness and aloneness and loneliness. A cry of abandonment that says, we've given up on you. From the crowd, his friends, his closest companions, yes, even God. Oh, that old rugged cross, where he will experience the give up on me feeling. Do you think God gives up on people? It brings us to that very real question, how do I know God is with me? What if this all is just a scam, a hoax? How do you know that it's God who is speaking? Oh, that thick and dreadful darkness of doubt. It's that same darkness you feel when you sit on a polished pew in a funeral chapel, listening to obituary of the one you loved more than life. That feeling. During the week I got a message from an old friend, and she said in the message, in the Facebook message, I buried my son on Wednesday. It hurts, nothing more. And I know her. Maybe she also has that feeling of, God, why have you forsaken me? God, did you give up on me? Did you leave me alone? Did you leave me on my cross? Did you leave me in my darkest hour? It's that same darkness you feel when you hear the words, this tumor is malignant. The same darkness that falls upon you when you realize you've lost your temper again. When you realize that the divorce you never wanted is final. Very much appropriate, the words of Jesus. Forgotten the crowds and the words of the crowds, Hosanna, yes, so evolved, so surrounded by darkness. But does God really give up? Does God really abandon you? Throughout time, though God's people often forgot their God, the good news is God didn't forget them. God always keeps His word. God doesn't give up. He never gives up. When Joseph was dropped into a pit by his own brothers, God didn't give up. When Moses said, "Here I am, send Aaron," God didn't give up. When Aaron was making a false god, God didn't give up on him. When Samson whispered to Delilah, when Saul roared after David, when David schemed against Uriah, God didn't give up. He could have given up. He could have turned his back. He didn't. Take Jesus. When people from his town, his hometown, tried to push him over a cliff, he didn't give up on them. When his brothers ridiculed him, he didn't give up. When he was accused of blaspheming God by people who didn't fear God, he didn't give up on them. When Peter worshipped him at the supper and cursed him at the fire, he didn't give up. When people spat in his face, he didn't spit back. When the bystanders slapped him, he didn't slap them. When a whip ripped his sides, he didn't turn and command the awaiting angels to stuff that whip down the soldier's throat. And yet, there on the cross, he felt, God, have you given up on me? It's a very difficult text. And throughout the ages, theologians have wrestled with this text. But the one thing we know is that he knows what it feels like to be alone, to be abandoned, to be given up on. Maybe you, sitting here this afternoon, you know that feeling. Maybe you know the feeling of abandonment, of aloneness. Maybe you don't know that feeling yet. I have bad news. It's part of life. The cross is part of life. And there are moments in our life when we experience the cross, when we experience this doubt, when we also ask the same question, God, where are you? But Easter has good news. You see, brothers and sisters, there's a crown. Just after Jesus cried out, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? John recorded the words of Jesus when he said, it is finished. Maybe we see those words in a very negative light. But the words in Greek, or the word in Greek is tetelestai. It is the word of a victor. It is the word of someone who is awaiting a crown. It's someone who has won the battle. Someone with hope. It is not a cry of defeat. It is a cry of a crown coming. And this is what is Easter all about. Easter is about the crowds. We hear the voice of the people. We hear what people say. But Easter is more than that. Easter tells us, get out. Get to a place where you can hear God. Get to a place where you can realize that even in my darkest moments, I'm not alone. I'm not really abandoned. Because beyond the cross, there's a crown. And that's Easter morning. Jesus crying out, it is finished, and he gave himself to God. And then Easter. That was Friday. Sunday was coming. Maybe you feel like this today. Maybe you feel like this today. Can I trust the crowds? Can I trust what people say to me? Can I trust so many things? That beautiful hymn that we sang says this, oh, I'll cherish that old rugged cross. Because one day I'll change it for a crown. And this is hope. This is hope. After the cross, there's a crown. After your crying out, God, where are you? You'll find he has never left. You'll find Tetelestai, it's victory. God's victory through Jesus Christ. Amen.